Welcome to 1189, an online Bible commentary. My name is Tyler Marston. Today we're taking a look at Genesis chapter 30, where we're going to see the birth of 11 of the 12 tribes of Israel. And dude, this story is so crazy. I mean, it is just reality show, trashy, like, it's surprising it's in the Bible, right? And it's surprising that you know, the main characters of the story, the 12 tribes of Israel, are going to be born in this way. And we saw we got to this scenario because Jacob was screwed over by his father-in-law in response to Jacob screwing over his father and his brother, right? Laban gets one over on Jacob and has given him 2 wives and 2 other maids in exchange for 14 years of free labor, right? Needless to say, this is not God's ideal, right? I mean, remember that the serpent is the initial deceiver. The serpent was the first person to lie. The serpent was the first person to make Adam and Eve not trust in God and live by their own wisdom, right? And now that's spiraled out of control to where Jacob and Laban are just trying to get one back over on each other back and forth, right? Yet through all the deception, all the heartbreak, all the scandal, God is planting seeds for his ultimate redemption plan through the 12 tribes of Israel who are born here in this chapter. So we're actually going to pick up in verse 31 of chapter 29, just so that way all the sons are in one video. Now the Lord saw that Leah was unloved, and he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. Right, so again, this should be reminding us of the curse in Genesis chapter 3, verse 16. Talked about the toil in pain, in bearing children, in conceiving children, in reproducing life. It was cursed because of humanity's sin, and so that is going to show up in the way Rachel, who is more loved than Leah, is barren, and the way Leah, who is more unloved than Rachel, has this really fruitful womb. And dude, this situation is going to go from bad to full Jerry Springer when everybody starts having kids. The firstborn son is from Leah, and his name is called Reuben, which means see, a son. And since God saw Leah's affliction and gave them a son, now surely Leah says, Jacob will love me. And he doesn't, at least not more than Rachel. The next son to be born is named Simeon, also from Leah. That means hearing, since God has heard her that she's been unloved. And it doesn't make her loved. Not even 2 kids makes her loved. Leah gives birth again to a kid named Levi, which means attached, since now surely Jacob will attach himself to Leah since he's given her 3 kids, but he doesn't. Finally, Leah gives birth to her 4th son, Judah, which means praise. She says she's going to just praise the Lord anyway, since giving Jacob 4 sons has not made her any more loved in Jacob's eyes. It's been pretty tragic for Leah, right? I mean, she has been trying so hard to win Jacob's approval through having these kids, but it doesn't work. She realizes she can only trust and praise God for the children that he ultimately has blessed her with. Now, if you think that's the end of the story, you're sorely mistaken, because we've just gotten to the beginning of chapter 30. Now, when Rachel saw that she had borne Jacob no children, she became jealous of her sister, and she said to Jacob, "Give me children, or else I die." Then Jacob's anger burned against Rachel and said, "Am I in the place of God, who has withheld the fruit of your womb?" She said, Here, take my maid Bilhah, go into her that she may bear on my knees, that through her I may too have children. So she gave him her maid Bilhah as a wife, and Jacob went into her. Rachel, even though she's more loved by Jacob, is still jealous of her sister who's having all these kids. Rachel demands that Jacob take her servant Bilhah as a wife too, so that she may have kids through her. And this is just like chapter 16 with Abraham and Sarah. Sarah did the exact same thing, and we talked about how that doesn't make any sense, right? Those children would be Hagar's children in Abraham's story, and those children will be Bilhah's children in this story. And so in the greed of trying to get what only God can give you, children, they're forcing their servants, the people they're supposed to be protecting, into these situations of abuse, right? Naturally, of course, what happens, Bilhah gets pregnant and she has a son named Dan. Dan means judge because Rachel says, well, surely God has judged between me and my sister, and he's given me the victory because now Bilhah has a son, right? So surely God's chosen me to be the victor here. It's not even her son. Rachel, what are you talking about? Bilhah has a second son. Rachel names him Naphtali, which means my struggle, because Rachel and Leah have definitely struggled against each other, and Rachel has definitely won this round. What are we talking about? These are not what two mentally stable individuals would be naming their children. I mean, they're so bickering against each other. They're so at odds because of what their father did to them that they're trying to one-up each other through the names they're giving their children. Of course, for Rachel, it's not even her children. It's her servant Bilhah's. Of course, Leah sees all this, and she says, when Leah saw that she had stopped bearing, she took her maid Zilpah and gave her to Jacob as a wife. Leah's maid Zilpah bore Jacob a son. So Leah decides the only way I can beat Rachel is if I keep having more kids, but I haven't been having any luck, so I'm going to give my maid to Jacob as a wife. What? Zilpah bears a son who Leah names Gad, which means good fortune, since Leah is so fortunate to have this other son through her servant Zilpah. And then Zilpah has another son who Leah names Asher, which means happy, because Leah is so happy to have another son, even though she's had to cuckold herself to have him. This is the line that God is going to bring deliverance from. These are going to be the 12 tribes of Israel that are going to be, the heroes of the story going forward. I mean, this is worse than any trashy reality show you've ever seen. But God promises to use these people. And by the way, this isn't even the end. We're only 2/3 of the way through, right? Now, in the days of the wheat harvest, Reuben, that's Leah's firstborn, went and found mandrakes in the field and brought him to his mother Leah. Then Rachel said to Leah, "Please give me some of your son's mandrakes." But she said to her, "Is it a small matter for you to take my husband? Would you like to take my son's mandrakes also?" So Rachel said, "Therefore he may lie with you tonight in return for your son's mandrakes." When Jacob came in from the field that evening, then Leah went out to meet him and said, "You must come to me, for I have surely hired you with my son's mandrakes." So he lay with her that night. Rachel literally pimps out her husband for mandrakes. What are we talking? What is this, right? So in ancient times, mandrakes were symbolic of fertility, right? And they were used often in medicines that were supposed to make women more fertile. So that's what Rachel is after here. Reuben has picked these mandrakes probably to make Leah more fertile because she wants to have more kids. Rachel asks to have some. Leah says no. And Rachel exchanges a night with her husband, who is also Leah's husband, to Leah for the chance of becoming more fertile, right? That's how desperate they are to have kids. And notice that they're not praying to God for kids, because so far we've seen through the rest of the story that it's only God who provides life, right? It's only God who provides children and the ability to reproduce. And Rachel, instead of seeking God's will, instead of praying to God, asking for God's blessing on her life, she turns to mandrakes. She turns to pseudoscience. She is trying everything except God's plan, right? And another kid is conceived that night, but it's not by Rachel. Leah gives birth to another son. She names him Issachar. That means there's a reward or a wage, since God must have given her this son as a reward for allowing and encouraging her husband's infidelity. And then Leah gives birth to another son. She names him Zebulun. That means dwelling, since Jacob will surely dwell with her now that she's given him 6 kids. And guess what? He doesn't. Leah even gives Jacob a daughter, and they name her Dinah. This is the female version of the name Dan, which was the name Rachel picked for Bilhah's first son. And remember, that meant judge, right? Rachel said, "Oh, God judged between me and Leah, and he's judged me to be the victor, so I'm going to name this son Dan." Leah says, "Oh, God has surely judged between me and Rachel, and I'm going to name my daughter Dinah because of it." And then finally, it's Rachel's turn. Then God remembered Rachel, and God gave heed to her and opened her womb. So she conceived and bore a son and said, "God has taken away my reproach." Finally, she gets her own miracle, a son that could have only been provided by God, right? This son should have been like the promised son that God gave to Abraham through Isaac, right? The difference is that Jacob repeated Abraham's sin with Hagar 10 times, 10 other times before this promised son was born. And then let's look at what Rachel names this baby, this son, her one and only son, whom only God could have supplied her with. She named him Joseph, saying, "May the Lord give me another son." Joseph means he will increase. Rachel already wants another kid. Are you kidding me? Even when God, by all his judgment, grants her her greatest desire, what she should have been praying this whole time for, she's not satisfied. Because she doesn't actually want children as a blessing from God. She just wants to look better than her sister. Obviously, this is a mess of a family, okay? But also, obviously, God is using them and is blessing them. We see in the rest of the chapter this really cool story about how good Jacob is at his job and how God's blessing has been on him taking care of Laban's flocks. After 14 years of hard labor in service to Laban, he's ready to go home. Not to mention, he has 12 kids now to provide for and 4 wives. And Laban offers anything to get Jacob to stay, right? And Jacob, the old trickster, the old, the brains of the operation, he comes up with a little plan. Jacob says, "I'll work for you. I'll take care of your flock for 6 more years. If out of your whole flock, you just give me the ones that are speckled and spotted and have stripes, and the ones that aren't perfectly white or black." And Laban says, "Is that it? Sure, I'll take that for 6 more years of labor," right? Because those spotted, speckled, striped sheep were seen as inferior to the pure black or the pure white ones. But Jacob has a bit of an ace up his sleeve. Remember, he's been working with this flock for 14 years, right? He knows how many of each color there are, and he also knows their breeding habits, right? So he ends up putting all these aphrodisiac herbs in the water troughs of the sheep, and he breeds all the solid color sheep and goats with the speckled and spotted and striped ones, so that their offspring would also have speckles and spots and stripes, right? By the way, this is centuries before Mendeleev's pea plants, right? This is really a crazy story. Jacob also smartly only breeds the strongest of each solid colored and striped sheep so that the offspring will also be the strongest. So now, because Laban has gifted him all the speckled and striped sheep of his flock, he's got this new big flock of young, strong, speckled sheep that Laban has given to him. And so he pulls another one over on Laban. So on the whole, as much as Genesis 30 shows us that this family needs counseling, we see that God is blessing them with offspring, right? Definitely blessing Jacob with offspring, and also he's blessing them with resources, with the sheep from Laban's flock. And it's in response to the blessing and the promise that God gave to Jacob back in chapter 28, when he said, I will make you increase, I'm going to take care of you, I'm going to provide for you. God's keeping his promises, and he's working his plan in the background, right? This story is filled with pain and hurt, but we know that God has a plan and a way out of it. Because these 11 sons, and there's one more that's going to be coming later, are going to be the namesakes of the 12 tribes of Israel, and we'll be following their descendants for the rest of the whole Bible, man. So maybe you're from this type of family, right? Hopefully your dad doesn't have 4 wives, and hopefully you don't have 12 brothers and sisters. But man, even if you're from a family messed up like this, know that God has a plan. God is working it for redemption actively. And when we trust him, when we obey him, God takes care of us and he provides for us, even in the midst of all this pain and hurt, right? But that's it for today and for this week. Come back next week. We'll be seeing where Jacob goes from here. But until then, this has been 1189. Thanks for watching. I'm Tyler Marston. God bless.